importing data in SQL and understanding primary and foreign key. Let me start by showing you how you can import data in SQL. I'm going to put the data sets I want to import in this same database. All I have to do is right click in this database. You're going to see task, right? In the task section, you're going to see import flat file and import data. You can either import a CSV file or .xlsx file. That one is Excel workbook. To import a CSV file, you want to use import flat file. If you want to import an Excel workbook, that's .xlsx file, then you want to use the import data section. Let me start by showing you how to import flat file. Import flat file, and then this page is going to pop up. You want to click the next. It's going to ask you to specify input file. That means you have to pick the location for the file to be imported. So I'll browse my PC and I'm just going to pick this random data set and open it. You can see that it already gave us a table name. If you don't want that table name, you can change it and click next. Okay, so now it's going to give us a preview of what the data set you're trying to import looks like. This is the data set we used for our last project, and it's just showing us a preview of what it looks like. Now we are good with the preview, and then we can click next. So this place is just to modify the column. It's going to automatically assign data type to each column in the data set you are importing based on the type of data that is there. For example, the product type, it's applied nvarchar data type. Nvarchar just means that numeric varchar, right? I told you that varchar in SQL means string data, that's alphabetic column. And if you are now saying numeric varchar, that means the column contains both numbers and text. And that is when we use nvarchar in SQL. Let's go back. You can see that for our product type, it is just string that we have in that column. Why is it now assigning it as nvarchar? We can change it if you realize that, no, I don't want the data type to be nvarchar. Just click on the drop down beside that particular column and change it to varchar. And then you can check the other columns and see if the data type SQL assigned to it is the actual data type it's supposed to have. For example, we have price, which is float. You already know that float also means decimal, right? And you can see availability is writing tiny integer for availability. It also means integer, basically means number. So maybe the numbers in the availability column are small numbers. So you can proceed to check all the data types to see if it match the type of data you're trying to import. Okay, I'll come back to this primary key explanation when I want to explain the primary and the foreign key. And you can see we have a section for allow nulls. If you want to allow null value in the entire column, you just check this to allow null in the entire column. But if you don't want to allow null, you can uncheck it and then it's not going to allow null. That means it's going to remove every row that you have null values. But I'll always advise you to allow null. Do you know why? The reason is that you might have a particular cell where you have null values, and the cell where you even have the null value, it might just be something like stock level. And in your analysis, you don't even need anything on stock level. And you've removed all the rows that we don't have data on stock level. Imagine that we have like total of 500 rows of data and 200 cells in the stock level as null value. We now remove 200 rows out of 500 rows of data. That is about 40% of our data that we'll lose, which is very, very bad. That could cause our data or analysis being biased. So I'd advise that anytime you want to work in SQL, always allow null value, and you are going to remove the null values yourself manually. You first want to see why do we have null values. Check if we can get a replacement for it. If there's no replacement at all, you even need to like check in with your head data analytics department to be sure that you should remove the null value column. Move to the next page. Okay, so now it's just giving us a summary of what we are trying to import, and then we are just going to finish it. Can you see that our data is successfully inserted? Once you get this operation complete page, once you close that page, you can now come here in your database. That is where we have the data. You can see that it is not reflected yet. You just right click here and then you refresh. Once you refresh and you open the table, you can see now that we have the data set that we just imported. If you want to change the name, we can rename it. Just right click and practical alone. And then you can just write a query to check what the table looks like. And now we can see what the table actually looks like, the table we just imported. So you can just go to file, then you save as, all right? So if you want to save as, you just save it as anything on your PC and change it here from Excel workbook to CSV so that you'll be able to import it into SQL, all right? Now let me explain to you what primary and foreign key is and when to use them. Okay, so I'm going to open up a new query and I'm also going to create a new database for this explanation. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new database. It's keys because I'm using this database to explain the difference between primary and foreign key. A primary key uniquely identifies each record in a table. So let's say, for example, the table we had in this My First DB database. Let's check the table. The table is tagged customers, right? If you still remember that. So I can say select all from customers. Okay, so if we run this, right? You can see here that this ID uniquely identifies each record in this table. If I say, give me the details of customer 1002, you just come to this ID because we don't have two customers that has the ID 1002. ID is unique, right? So you just come here and say, okay, this is the customer with ID 1002. And then you can give me the details that the person's name is Dan, the age is 34, and the location is China. Another thing is primary key cannot have null value. Your primary key column, you cannot have null value there. Your table can only have one primary key. In a single table, you cannot have multiple primary key. It has to be just one primary key you have on one table. Lastly, it is often used as a reference by other tables. So we have primary key here. Other tables can reference this primary key. Okay, and I'm going to show you an example of that shortly. So a foreign key, on the other hand, is a field or a group of fields in one table that refers to the primary key in another table. Okay, so in this our new database, let's try to create a new table. So I'll change it from here. I'll change it to keys. Okay, so now if I run this, it's not going to find the table because we don't have it. So let's create another table that we are going to call customers in this new database. So we want to create a new table called customers in this keys database, all right? We are going to have just two columns, the customer ID column and the customer name. Considering the fact that we have just two columns in this table, you already know that the customer ID will be the primary key because if we use customer name as the primary key, I am Oluwatosin. They may have another customer in that company that is Oluwatosin. I mean, a lot of people can be Oluwatosin and any other name that we have, all right? But you see, ID will uniquely identify each name, all right? So that means the customer ID in this case will be our primary key. You can specify while creating your data table which one is the primary key. So you can just write primary key right in front, specifying the data type. Okay, so now we are saying create a table called customer. We want to have two columns. The first column is integer data type. It is the primary key for this particular table. And the second column is a string data type. All right, so we can run this now. Let's quickly insert values into this table. I want to insert just two rows into this data table. So I'm going to run this now. Okay, and if we check our data table now, you can see that we now have two customer details, their name in this particular table. Let's create another table now to explain the foreign key and how it can reference the primary key. So first, you have to keep at the back of your mind that what a foreign key does is it creates relationship between two tables, all right? And it can have duplicates or null values. Trying to create another table, which is the others table, and we are going to connect it with this customer's table using the foreign key, which is the customer ID. Okay, so we are creating a table called the orders table. So that's the table where we have what the person ordered and how much it is. Okay, so we have the order ID, right? Order ID is what we use to trace every details about that order. And because it will uniquely identify each record in this orders table, then it's safe to say that it is also a primary key, right? Remember, this is another table entirely. And I said we can have one primary key in one table, okay? So now we are having another column in this table, which is the sales table. Sales is going to be like 50.25 or 200.57. So I want it to be two decimal place. That's why I opened a bracket. I first said, okay, it's going to be a decimal data type. Then I open a bracket to specify. This 10 I first typed is similar to the varchar where we put into brackets n, which represents the highest character. And in this case, we are representing it by 10. That is, whatever sales record we are having, maybe the highest product in our store, one unit of the product is like 1,000, and 1,000 is like 4 digits, right? 1000, that's 4. Okay. And then we are saying, okay, the decimal place should be 2 decimal place. If we had the 4 digits, maybe 1,050 cents. If we had it together, that's 6 digits altogether, which is not up to 10. All right. So that is why we set a limit that the highest should be 10. And now we want to have another column in this new orders table, which will be the customer ID. Okay. And I'm now saying in this last line that the customer ID that I'm creating in this orders table is a foreign key, and it will reference the customer ID in the customers table that we created right here. Okay. So it's basically like we are trying to create a connection between this orders table and this customer table. I hope with this explanation you have an idea of what a primary key is. It uniquely identifies each record in a table, and a foreign key that establishes relationship between two tables. Okay, and that is all for today's class. So try to practice the primary foreign key and understand it better. We are going to make use of it more when we get to joins in SQL. I'll see you tomorrow, and bye for now.